Okay. All right. So we shall get started. Today is Tuesday, March 21st, 2023, and it is 6:05 approximately PM. And this is the town council meeting. So Leroy, Misty, or Jean, which one of you, or Paul? Well, not, I won't leave you out, Paul. Which one of you would like to offer an opening thought or prayer? Or Darlene, because you've done this before, where you've offered it. Okay, anyone? Going to offer the opening thought or prayer?
I got last one, so
That's right, you did last month.
I'll trade on some.
I did it a month before.
Okay, then we'll just do the pledge of allegiance to get started. So pledge of allegiance.
I think Misty's would.
Voluntold. Do a good volunteer. Okay. Go listen to the pledge of allegiance first. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Our dear friend, gracious Heavenly Father, we ask you to please be with us at this time, that we will have clear minds and that we will be able to make decisions that are the best for our town, and that we can have a sense of unity and work together. We thank you for this opportunity to serve. We thank you for this beautiful moisture. We say it in the name of Jesus Christ.
Okay, does anyone have conflict of interest with anything on the agenda tonight? I'll start with you, Jean.
Well, yeah, I guess I'd be used to.
Oh, yeah,
Your contract, I think, would be.
Item A on business. Well,
okay.
I guess it's.
You know, well,
Was
what
that-
happened there? Oh, that,
Somebody maybe does that.
yes, I know. I did not mess up on this. My agenda was perfect until I emailed it to you in doc format, which I never use Microsoft with. So anyway, that's all. We know which one you're talking about.
Right, you know,
Okay.
there's a couple A's, more than one.
Yes, there, I see that. Okay, Leroy, any conflict of interest?
No,
Neither do I, as far as I'm aware. Misty?
No, as far as I'm aware, no.
Paul?
No.
Okay, so council comments. I have a couple of things I'm gonna mention. The ULCT is having their mid-year conference down in St. George. They always have it in the springtime down in St. George, and this year it is April 20th and 21st. So if anybody on planning commission or town council wants to attend, then feel free to let Crystal know and we will get you registered to attend the conference. Then on Thursday, I set a meeting for residents of Pocketville Road to come in and talk to us about the speed cushions. So I'm just reminding you all of that. Leroy, you said you were gonna be gone, you just watch the recording later. So Missy said she's gonna go, Jean, you haven't said yet. And then Paul, I'm assuming you're gonna be there.
What time did you say we were setting it up?
6 o'clock. Yeah, so Crystal will post a notice tomorrow.
Okay.
Put it on the public hearing, public notice website.
And I took pictures, and I forgot to send them to you. I had
Oh,
time when I was in Chandler, I took pictures of some speed cushions there. So-
Okay, so we can look at them on Thursday.
That's some of my speed too, that were like you were describing,
Oh.
exactly what the.
Okay, the ones that were kind of flat across the top and then down, okay. And then lastly, I have felt that our planning commission could do with some serious training. I feel like the 3 new people really do not quite understand their job. So I've made arrangements with the ULCT and their attorney, Todd Godfrey, who is the ULCT's general counsel, is going to do some training with planning commission on May 5th. And this will be Virgin, Rockville, Springdale, all three towns. This is just for planning commission. I'm not asking any town council members to go. And for the clerks also. So you'll have to put that on your calendar, Kristen. And I don't have a time yet. I'm waiting for them to tell me. I wrote back, chose the date after conversations with Rockville and Springdale. And then I wrote back to ULCT this morning to tell them the chosen date of May 5th and to let us know the time. So that we can send stuff out. And that's all. Oh no, I do have one other thing here as a council comments. So you guys, I made a copy of this letter that came in today. Crystal picked it up at the post office today. And I thought you all should see it, this letter from Sitla. Following up on what I told you guys about the water tank that they now say trespassers on Sitla land. And it looks like they are asking if we would have this property. They're asking if we have had the property surveyed. And I am sure that we have not. And so I am assuming that we should do that as a result of this. So what do you think, Keith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have some
So
research. Find any other agreement, these.
I haven't found anything yet. I was hoping Jay Lee would be here tonight so I could ask him what he remembers about this.
Under fascinating that we spend that kind of money to, I mean, I know it was a long time ago, but we didn't own or have a lease on the property that we built water tank on.
Yeah, I would be surprised too. And it's just barely over the line. I mean, here's the property line between BLM and Sitla, and it is right there, which makes me think they may have thought it was BLM at the time. Because when you look at the parcels on the county website, that water tank is on Sitla land, just barely. So, we'll do a survey then after that. They want us to pay rent. We weren't here at the work.
Oh, they want
They want us to pay rent
for that.
for our water tank being on their property.
Portion of it.
They expressed what they would.
No, they just left a message saying, that they want us to pay rent. I figured we'll do a survey. I'll contact this guy and ask him for more information, like what do they have in mind, but,
Do you know how much civil land we have in the town boundaries?
as far as I'm aware, that's it. I was real surprised to see any. Oh, no, there's some out Sheep Ridge Road.
Sheepbird.
Yes. Because I was looking for that. There's a little out Sheep Ridge Road and then that up there. And even then, I'm not sure that all of that Sitla property is in town boundaries. I think some of it is and some of it is not.
I'd love to be on that conversation.
I would love for you to be on that
Because if
conversation
you,
too.
if Sitla wants to play like that, then they still have to come and get land use developments from the town, and they usually don't. It's kind of it's a very interesting position that they're taking, wanting us to pay rent for a water tank.
Is there any kind of statute of limitations on that? I mean, it's been there for a long time.
Well, they're a governmental entity,
So they can
can't assert any sort of prescriptive right or easement by under the concept of adverse possession against another governmental entity. So we don't. In fact, if there is not any sort of easement or lease.
And there's no, I'm guessing because it's government entity, we can't do any eminent domain on it either.
Now, did they own the land when the tank was built? Do we know that?
We do not know.
I would assume something that maybe we probably need to tell Mr. Jorgensen, probably ought to make a grammar request. Is it on asking for all documentation back when they, so if you understand, trust lands in the state of Utah is part of a federal act that was created. All the states were given some public land. And the use of it was to be for higher education. And so each state set up their own. We in the state of Utah, we have the state of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. They've worked over the years. I mean, this was given. I want to say the act was in the 1920s when it was done. And since then, since the creation of SITLA, you know, they've tried to make land trades so they can conglomerate, because they got a portion of 40 acres square in every township, right, or section. And so they've been working hard to try to conglomerate all their land into larger masses. And then they look at opportunity strategies to develop it and sell it, co-develop it with people. They do a lot of mineral leases, out in the central and eastern part of the state. But yeah, I'd be fascinated to see how long they've owned it, because this may not have been one of the original grants under the Land Act.
So they could have traded some other land for this land. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I would say clearly then, if that existed, if that water tank was on the property when they acquired it, then I think they're gonna have a hard time saying, oh, we don't have a prescriptive easement to have it there.
So you would like us to file a grant request for what?
Well, I'd like to have a conversation
With him
him,
first.
see what he's thinking, and make sure that we understand, and it sounds to me like they're trying to understand too.
And I'm wondering, just off the top of my head, at the motivational, since it is a kind of trust land, you have to manage it as a trust. Maybe they then want to be able to say, because we're encroaching on it, some type of consideration for use of their land, because it's a trust, maybe nominal consideration would be sufficient. So, you know, what's the motivation? Is it based on trust law, or is it based on money making? I don't know.
I don't know, I wondered if they were trying to get,
Most things,
property
I've
to
actually, a long time ago, I did some consulting work for Sitla, and I've dealt with Sitla a lot over the last 22 years, and usually the bottom line is the bottom line.
Okay.
yeah,
With their motivation, it is all about,
The
and
money.
they'll put PowerPoint presentations of the school kids and all the good things that they're doing for education in the state of Utah, but
okay,
you try to do a deal with Sitla, and it is all about how much for us.
yeah, okay, because I wondered if they were getting ready to maybe put the property up for sale. Because they did sell some similar land last year. It's actually in the county, but it's right south of the river. It's over where generally back where Red Bull Rampage would take place, and they put that up for sale, and Under Campus bought it. And I just wondered if this came up because they were looking at it. It's something else.
Any properties up for sale for the right price. It's always any properties up for co-development or for mineral leases and.
Okay, so would you like me to call I mean, you said you want to be part of the conversation.
Yeah,
Do
maybe.
you want to just give a call, or do you want us to set up a joint call?
Let's just set up a joint call and
Okay.
sit in on it and ask him a few questions, and then I think probably based off that, we ought to at least request all the documents that Sitla has as to how they acquired title of the property and if they've got anything in their records.
Jean,
Yes.
we did receive a email from Ron Ferguson from,
Today?
weeks ago from them. I talked about how they wanted to lease it. Or not lease it.
Rent,
Rent.
make us pay rent.
He sent me over an application. I just opened the application, it's $250. And he was gonna send this over, fill this out, and send it to me.
Is that the application fee?
You can show, so you've got it on the screen there?
Read the small print.
So that's an application for what?
They want to lease it, they want us to pay it.
Okay, so you need to send
Land
me,
use.
you need to forward that email to me, because I wasn't aware of that. Excuse me, guys, I clearly I have a very bad cold. I've got,
Oh,
yeah. Something
he
else.
said, this is what his email says, we would like to get authorized and leased and work with the town to determine trespassing.
Okay, so that's why, so
That's
since we,
the letter.
so since we have not replied, that's why we sent this certified letter that we got today. Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so that was it. Those are my comments. I see next here is something from the Hurricane Valley's Fire District. So I assume Paul, you would like to talk about that? This resolution?
Yeah, just briefly, this is resolution for the follow the work of, and I recently learned, Joey listened, high school buddy of Gene.
Yeah, no, he told me.
Yeah, so some good work to get House Bill 392 passed at our request that allows us to put 1% of the county with the vote of the people to place a 1% tax, sales tax for EMS services. And yesterday, fire board approved this resolution that will go to the county 4-1. Nanette Billings she voted no, not because of the resolution, because she wanted some more information. And we're under a time crunch to get it to the county so we can get this to the ballot by August. So we didn't have time to delay it. So that's it. The other comment that I have is I'm in some Cubs guard because baseball season starts next week, March 30th. And you're gonna see this every year, and maybe we'll have citizens show up with their favorite team at the start of the baseball season next year. Yeah. But I didn't give her heads up notice either.
So this is
Do not, or if I would, from my retirement.
So this is not something that we eventually are going to have to
No.
write a resolution of support or anything like that.
We may have to, but let's talk with the fire board and get some more information on what it's gonna do. All that information indicates that this is gonna be very good compared to the taxes. That would be, this benefits the citizen in that it's gonna be lower than any tax that would be placed on in most states, not all states. But we're still getting the numbers, so I'm guessing that the fire board is gonna want resolutions from the town.
Okay,
Wait till we actually
get to that point.
get it done.
The tax, so the levy of sales tax, and that's set by the county, and I'm thinking county commissioners will want to know not only the fire district, but the municipalities or the action.
Okay.
My question is always been, I don't know how else you would do it, it's gonna have to be a countywide.
On the ballot? A vote?
And the tax is going to be collected countywide.
Yeah, that's what I still haven't figured out myself, whether it can be district wide or just county.
Yeah, I don't know how you do that on sales tax. Property tax would be very easy, with it if you're within. But, the idea is that we're such a, tourist-based community here, and most of the areas in the Hurricane Valley Fire District are very tourist-based, and so a lot of the calls, the responses and stuff, that are the district has to respond to is because of tourist camping, wildfires, different things like that. And they think that the residents are, unfortunately bearing most of the burden of financing the fire district, when more of it could probably come from sales tax, which then would tax the tourist base.
Oh, I see.
That's the concept behind the district working with, our state legislature to try to get this type of tax implemented and authorized, and so. That's it.
Okay, oh, there's one more thing I thought of, well, that I want to make a comment on. So, for the work we've done on the roof and the air conditioning that we got the grant for the town hall. I was talking to them, to Paul about it today, and he mentioned that I need to have the town council, ratify the contract with the people that will be doing the work. So I did not have it on the agenda, so I'll put it on the agenda next week. For, the people that got the bids, we only got one bid for air conditioning, one bid for the roof, so I mean, who's gonna get the contract? The people who gave us the bid. So the only bids that we got, so, I'd already told them to, and had a meeting with the roofing guy yesterday and have a meeting scheduled with the air conditioning guy tomorrow to talk to them about exactly what it is that we want. And, so I've already told them they're the ones, but Paul said that we need to have this, voted on by the town council, so I'll put it on the agenda next one.
I have a quick question. Do we have, they're not just doing the roof, right? They're doing the infrastructure under the roof? Or-
Yes, yeah, they have to do the infrastructure under the roof. There's, because, you know, we had the building tinted for termites. I mean, everything's wrong, everything's termite ridden. So the trusses have to be replaced, and there's that decorative, the white decorative area underneath the roof that has to be replaced too. And then,
Not to mention the fire.
yeah,
You might put the storm drain and really slam on your April thing too.
all right. So,
We only have one bid, but,
we gotta do it, okay. All right,
and it's a
so,
good thing to postpone it because those contractors have run over the big equipment and it just kind of collapsed. I don't know if you've seen that when you're walking around.
just recently,
Yeah.
okay. I have, okay, all right, I will look at, I'll look
It
tomorrow.
hasn't damaged it, but if we have done the work.
Okay. Okay, Misty, do you have anything for council comments? Nope. No. Well, I know that, Leroy does.
Just want to notify the council that we started our budget process today with the accounting firm, and the mayor and I and Sil from the accounting firm are part of it. And we had a lot of questions about various items, and the accountant's going to get back to us on what's in there. So we'll probably finalize that budget in April, and then we'll come before the council in the April or the May.
So hopefully we'll set the public hearing for, the April meeting.
And our deadline's June, right?
Yes, but we
For
will-
the budget.
Yes, but we have always tried to get it in May. Don't want to wait for the last minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, we try to get it in May, so that it's. The other thing I had is just an update on how we're doing financially, and year to date, we have $727,000 and $414 in income. Expenses of $347,673. That leaves us a surplus of $379,740. And as far as budget's concerned, we should be at 66% right now. 66.67% of our budget, and our income is at 84%. And our expenses are at 53%. And so that's the reason why we have that excess. Of course, we plan for an excess. We try to budget so that we weren't using all the funds coming in, because we know the needs in this town for a lot of improvements to roads and water system. Any questions?
No, I don't. Hey, Jean, do you have anything for council comments? Okay, all right. Then we'll move on to the consent agenda. This is for approval of the minutes of the February 19th town council meeting and approval of checks and invoices for February. So, has anyone had any changes to the minutes that, from the February 19th meeting?
I've already made no changes to the first vote.
Okay. Okay, and I,
Before I send a couple, did you do some of the grammatical?
No.
Okay, because there's, I'll send them to you. I haven't had a chance to send you, there's like an F missing an of in one of the places. It's just a couple, I'll send it.
it's safe for me. I didn't have time to send it to you, but I will. So,
If you're using this document, I can correct them.
Please do.
okay. So what she's looking at is the one that already has false changes on it.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So if there's no objections, I will take a consent agenda.
I might have already fixed them by the way.
You should pick a couple, but like there's in one of the statements, it's, let me see, did you fix it just now?
No, I said I might have already fixed them, because I fixed some of them and added all.
I'll look through it again and then.
Okay.
All right, so I'll take a motion for the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes to the minutes that we sent through.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, so we're at open forum. Darlene, do you have any comments for open forum? If not, then we will close open forum because you're our only person here in our only in-person visitor. Crystal, I made the comment to you before that as we write down the names of the people that are here, we'll keep track. I'm gonna start writing down the names of everyone who's watching online so that we can have them noted as having attended the meeting. I'm assuming, Keith, that we should do that for our minutes. Put who is watching online. Okay,
If we can discern,
yeah,
I mean, if their user 8123456.
yeah, sometimes people put that on there. Let me write down who's on here real quick. And then we will move on with our public hearing. Well, in fact, while I'm doing this, we can move on to we should take a motion to open the public hearing while I'm doing this.
Merry Christmas.
I'll take them to this.
Those are for your kids.
That's what I figured.
I'll give them to my grandparents. I know it's easy. So you're waiting for a motion,
I am waiting for a motion to go into the public hearing.
motion to close the public meeting and open the public hearing.
Second.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
I,
and I. Okay, so we are now in the public hearing, and as I indicated on the agenda, that we were going to do a public hearing about amending the budget for the fiscal year for a quarterly budget amendment. And then when I was talking with Crystal, not Crystal, Candace, the other day, she called and was like, why are we doing a resolution? Why are we amending the budget? And I said, I wanted to do them on a quarterly basis, so we didn't have such a big amendment at the end of the year. And then I realized next month, we are having a public hearing to amend the budget for, so I was just like, never mind, we'll just do it next month. So that's what this is for. So that resolution will be continued to next month. And I want to change it, the number from being letter B, because it's not taking place yet. And I want to, on this agenda where we have the next two are C and D, I want to change those to B and C. So that we keep it in mind. And I do not want to have B come in April and just be out of order. So I made a note on some of your agendas that we change it to B and C.
I move that we continue this agenda item until next month. And so continue this public hearing and agenda item until next month.
Let's say again, G. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so This next resolution that is R 2023 C is now actually going to be R 2023 B. This is the resolution amending the Virgin Town fee schedule for the increased impact fee for the Water Conservancy District and increasing the deposit for the construction meter rentals. So, anybody have any comments from the peanut gallery out there about the fees being updated? Okay. Then we will move on to the next resolution, which is on the agenda as R 2023 B as a dog, and I'm going to change that to C as a cat. This is a resolution establishing a review committee and procedures to review and decide disbursement of funds to citizens of Virgin needing assistance in paying their water bills due to financial struggles or circumstances. Any comments on that? Yes, Darlene.
Darlene Cohen. I just was wondering who would be on this team?
We can, are we gonna talk about that then, when we bring it up to discuss under new business, when we get ready to vote on it?
Well, we can,
But you wanna go ahead and answer
I
now?
might as well answer that now. I'll be- refresh my memory if you have to.
Not to mention, there's nobody else here for her. so.
Most people don't know.
All of their citizens who would be relevant, first meeting and the most interesting meeting considered.
Okay,
It is Crystal and it's Leroy and I'm trying to remember, we don't have the resolution in front of me.
it's in your pocket.
County treasurer, county clerk, and one member of the town council.
So I remember the town council, yeah.
So, do you not have a copy of the resolution?
I don't have internet.
Okay. The resolution says the committee shall consist of the town treasurer, which is Leroy, the town clerk, which is Crystal, and one member of the town council. Just gonna be open to the public on this.
Well, something we can add to the resolution. Or two, if you want to not have a voting issue of having 4 members, having 5.
Is that it?
Now, the issue with having a member of the public, or it depends. The way this was drafted was, and the way that the procedure was hoping to work is that we would just get account numbers from Crystal, but we wouldn't have the names of people.
So,
And so nobody would know who they were in the community unless they made an application themselves. Because there's 2 ways to get it before the community council. One is for Crystal to look and say, hey, this person's 2 months committee, let's make a decision on it, because I know the financial circumstances are not paying, only paying 10%. So we just have the account number and the circumstances around it. But then if somebody applies, which was Gene's amendment that he wanted in there, if somebody applies, then obviously we would have their name in there, or, and we can always black it out, I suppose, and just list the reason.
no, I would not let anyone apply anonymously.
Well, I mean, like. People don't wanna come forward and say.
No, but if it's just the committee that is-
Pay my bill,
If it's just you, the town treasurer, and one member of town
but
council,
they might still not want their name forward.
okay,
You never know, people are just,
Yeah, but they-
especially if they're having some really kind of financial problem, last thing they want is. What happens if it's one of your neighbors who they just don't want to do nothing? And you're on the committee, you know what I mean? So I think sticking with like account numbers is hard.
History.
Huh?
And history.
Does that answer your question, Arden?
That's fine, but just something to consider, if you don't know who they are, how
exactly,
do you know it's a valid?
exactly.
And then I agree, that's an argument just to have a council member, or maybe Crystal, and then Leroy, right? That's an argument for that, but I think. Unless they're, you know what I'm trying to say?
That's.
You'll have the circumstances, though,
That's
And
what,
so you'll vote on the circumstances, not on the person.
That's what I'm saying, we need to have a council member and history, because then it shows the history of what has been going on.
Crystal couldn't know who it is no matter what, because
I have to apply the credits.
I didn't have to apply the credit.
But I'm just saying, what happens if it's because you're on the committee, they don't wanna come to your, you know what I mean? They're able to come in.
So do we need to make any amendments then to this resolution?
We want to step it out when we get to.
Oh, yeah, sorry. So any
I
other,
had some suggestions.
okay, any other comments or questions from Darlene? Okay, all right, so then I'll take a motion to close the public hearing and go back to our public meeting.
Motion to close the public hearing and reopen the public meeting.
Okay,
Did we get the
Second.
last one? Oh, we did, that was the
That-
last.
that was the last one. All right,
I'll second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, Jean. All right, so on to new business then. We will consider the resolution about adopting the budget for the, no, sorry. Not that one, the Virgin Town fee schedule, amending the fee schedule to include, so the construction reserve deposit fee is being raised from $1,000 to $2,000. And then the Water Conservancy District impact fee, they have raised their,
They've raised their portion about $54 of what we as the town would pay to them. So if you see in the red there that I wrote on there, we pay them $2,296 and they have raised it to $2,350. Out of the 2,525, 299 went to the town, which made it about 2,525. My suggestion is to keep it an even number, is to raise our fee and to be 300, and then they get the 2,200 or 2,350.
so it'd be raising the impact, we'd be raising the impact fees are charged by $55. Okay. 54 to the Water Conservancy District, because that's what they've raised their fee, and then $1 for the town,
Correct.
for a total of 55. Okay,
So it'd be,
so the total would be $23.50.
the total together
Would be 26.
would be 2,650.
Oh, yes, that would be the impact fee that the town charges, but we're only talking about the Water Conservancy District.
Yeah, but we're raising ours from,
Okay,
we're raising.
so the
ours-
water impact fee,
We're raising ours by $1.
Yes.
So we need to.
yes, okay,
Probably should just amend the resolution where in the records you can see what happened. In the future, but.
yeah, no, that's fine, I just want to make sure that the $23.50 is,
The water conservancy.
The Water Conservancy District's fee.
and
That's what
then
they told
ours will be 300.
Correct.
Any objection from anyone? On that,
Paul's thinking,
what,
Paul's thinking.
Paul's thinking,
No, I'm fine.
okay.
You look like I'm saying.
Let's make it waiting for a motion.
Okay, then I'm ready for a motion
I'm
to,
fully in support of this construction areas.
Make a motion to approve resolution R 2023 B, raising the water conservancy or bring the fees up to the necessary amount of Washington County or Washington County Water Conservancy District. To 23.50 and the town from 299 to 300.
and the construction fee to deposit.
And construction fee to 2,000 from 1,000.
Right, all in favor? Oh, well, a second,
I'll second.
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I assume that did not need to be a roll call vote, we're not spending money,
Or increasing.
but we're increasing the fee, so it should be roll call, okay.
Aye.
Jean, as I, Leroy,
Aye.
Jean, I, Misty,
Aye.
Paul, okay. On to the next one. Resolution R 2023, that on the agenda says D, we're going to change that to C. A resolution establishing the review committee to decide disbursement of funds to assist citizens of Virgin being assistant in paying their water bills due to financial troubles or circumstances.
Mayor,
Yes,
one correction, members of the committee right now would be Leroy, because he's the town treasurer, the clerk. And then the resolution provides I would be the third member from the council until removed by a majority of the town council.
okay. Does it say that on here, or that's the motion?
No, it should be already on there. So I don't agree.
When I read
Oh,
this,
yes, there it is. Okay.
when I read this, it is on there.
Yeah, I see.
I only have one thing I'd like to suggest we at least not hardline ourselves into calling on item A, the second page portion of it. Says the fund will not be used to pay for accounts owed or in arrears due to water leaks. What if we get ourselves in a situation where the person's having financial hardships already, now has a water leak? So maybe change it to say the fund will not be used where water leaks are the sole issue. Does that make sense? Family struggling, they come in for help, and during that time.
No, it's a good point.
If that's the only thing that's putting them in arrears or whatnot, then maybe that's where you, I don't know, but
No,
I know what its purpose is.
yeah, no,
But you never know, like you said, you might have a combo thing where somebody they're having financial problems. And then they develop a water leak and it's like, what next?
So I'm just thinking you got where you're generally in a town where your forest folks are living and where the water lines are typically the worst, so, because it's the older sections of town.
yeah.
I'm not sure you're right, but just something.
No, I was just thinking of the language that you were using to see if there was any better language.
Was that one of the things you had as an issue with Steve, or yours or something else?
There's a
I'm all right with that solely caused by,
Solely because of other.
yeah. Unless, Steve can think of some other language, but I'm all right with it. I think everybody knows that you can.
Right.
And that makes sense.
Quick thought, word thought, right, you're doing this. Everybody who has water leak in town comes to me and says, I have a water leak, we know where they go. Everybody,
Right.
not one, everybody, anybody has water leak, they call me up and say, what can you do to help their window? $5, $10, $15, I don't care how much the leak is, they'll come and ask what the town can do after everyone.
So that segues into my concern.
Okay, because just today when we were doing the budget, there's a line item in the budget for where we have been basically writing off people's water bills because of the water leaks and how much longer are we gonna do this? Because everybody should have that Eye on Water app by now. And they could see, they could check it every day and know if you've got a water leak.
When we talked about this before, I proposed that we put in a limit of how many times they can use it within a certain year frame, so they can only use the water leak and like once or twice within 3 years.
That's what Hurricane has it,
And they
you
can
know,
only
the water
use
leak,
it, yeah,
they'll help you with your bill one
What
time
time?
every 3 years.
right, and that's still, the leak has other stipulations added to it as well, but they have a different policy for each, and that's what my concerns were is. Number one, how many times are we gonna help within a certain period of time?
Okay.
Because there are, and I'm not saying this about our citizens, it should, I actually worked at Hurricane, and this is where it comes from. There's habitual users,
Uh-huh.
and then there's people that call for a $5 help with the $5 leak. Where we're gonna set that line, that's the only thing I had a problem with these, is that we need to set up some policies.
But this is for, but this has nothing, we're not using this for people with water.
No,
leaks.
but even for people that have financial circumstances,
We have
There
not,
is a limit.
there needs to be a limit.
There is a limit on that
that would be better.
One for your.
I'm not usually the bleeding heart type, but I think there are people in our town, I think of one in particular that comes to mind, is Glenda Wilson and others who are elderly, who do not know how to use the internet, who do not have
Yeah.
phones.
Right.
That's my first concern. And the second is I'd like to see if there's possible, I don't know the system, but it would be nice if the town could take moments, the town sees that the water, we shut the water off if we can't get hold of something.
So I check it at least weekly.
I know you spot it, and I know the one person that we're talking, that kind of brought this about, I know that they were contacted, but you weren't able to get a hold of them. And if there's a way that the town would say, look, we're not able to get a hold of them, we know there's a water leak, Chase, go shut the water off. I don't know if that's possible, but.
We have done that. I mean, I haven't had a work guy for.
Right.
We have done that in the past, but only once that I'm aware of, where we sent them over and said, cut off their water. Because they clearly don't realize this leak is terrible.
Or this is a committee just for the. water
Just for the
bills.
people with bills.
We can set a policy for the leaks is what I
Yes.
suggest.
I agree with you, because I have one for us to talk about anyway.
And the thing that we should explore also, is I know some communities, I don't know if they do it in Utah, I know they do it in other states. There's some private companies out there that will provide inexpensive insurance for water.
Water
leaks.
leaks. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna write down here that we're gonna come up with a policy.
Well, hang on just a second, let me ask this.
Yeah.
Can we, is it, how hard is it to set up? To break our fund into two parts and have one that's for indigents and one is for water leaks? So where this committee could only deal with water leaks. or
Well,
with- with,
this fund, I think the problem comes in is this fund was actually created to help people do the financial circumstances. But now we have a trust for that purpose only. And we never created rules and procedures for that. And if people are going to contribute to that, they want to make sure that's used for that only. And so for this particular account, I would say, my view is, don't mix them up there. You know, let's set up a different account for that.
we don't need to change anything.
Right.
Because this fund will only be used.
And I think we need to come up with a solution for the water leaks.
Yes,
Okay.
okay. So let's vote on this. We'll vote on this.
All right, I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2023-C. Seems like this oddly short number, is that right?
Yes,
Dash C, as written.
with our change,
Oh, you gotta take your one part.
we changed solely caused by water leaks, we changed.
You won't need that
Well, need
because
that,
you have a separate.
Oh, okay, that's great.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. All right, now I have renumbered my agenda, because on the next page where it started A, B, C, D again, it should have continued on with. Because that last one here on the bottom is G, this should continue as H. Up here, ratification of revised independent contract agreement, G should have been H. Not another A, so I bring that an H. Okay, so I will say a little bit about this, but this was done by, this was suggested by you three, Misty, Leroy, and Paul. So, about changing the independent contract agreement, so I don't want to say a whole lot about it because I was not the decider. So if one of you three would like to kind of introduce this topic.
Well, I guess I'll start it off. I know both chiefs were not part of the conversation. One thing that became clear with the two appeals, Johnny Lee's appeal in April and Lord, thank you. Lord Campbell and April's appeal is that, and it's two items we're going to consider today, that we're going to continue to get those appeals until we start to make some changes. One of the things that we've heard for a long time is people complaining about being receiving payment from each of the building permits. And I understand the history and why it was there and the need to do that and so on, but we progressed to a point now that I think it's better that we just make an independent contract based on a fixed salary type amount. And that covers any during down period, but it also removes any potential conflict of interest or him having to step aside because of certain conflict of interest. We may still have to step aside based on zoning administrator position, but the financial basis should not become the basis anymore. It eliminates any more common law, allegations of common law, conflict of interest or whatever. So that was one of the bases. And we haven't got to, the other thing was, we needed to change the way we deal with level 1 and level 2, or we're gonna continue to see appeals. And so the three of us decided to ask Steve to come up with the proposed language that we're gonna look at later.
Okay. So Leroy and I had, Sil run, the numbers of what, Jean had been paid each year as zoning administrator. And I had already run the numbers myself because, I was thinking we were going to be looking for a new zoning administrator, and so I wanted to figure out what we would be paying this zoning administrator. And, so I had already run the numbers, but we had still run them just to be safe, and I was off by like $1,000. But we came to, Leroy and I talked about it. And we came to a figure and we proposed it to Gene and he was fine with it. As long as it was the town could afford it, which we could. So. He's changed section 2, so I have here A, B, and C, 3 independent contractor agreements. A is the one that Gene signed initially. And you can see that under section 2 compensation terms, that's where he was paid so much per permit. And we changed that to an annual salary. So that's paid on a bi-weekly basis, just like everyone else. And the exempt status, expense reimbursement, that appears to be the same. I'm sorry, what?
Identical.
Yeah, it's identical. All right. So I asked Heath to, I sent him the numbers and said, write up a new contract, amend the contract and fix the compensation terms to be the new term. So that he's paid salary instead of like fees. And then I gave that to Gene to sign. And he compared it with the previous agreement and saw that there was a change that he had made. And I was wondering, let me see if I can find where that is.
Section 4.
Section 4, yes, section 4. So he had made a change in section 4. This is on item B. This is on the one that's number B, not C. I have yours, A, B, and C. You're the only one who doesn't have his number A, B, and C is Leroy. Because he had this file with him.
This is B.
Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about now.
And this is C.
So I'm assuming that what I want to ask you before you say anything was, when you changed that, what was in your mind? I assume you were looking out for the best interest of the town, because you did tell me when you and I had our meeting the other day, that you said that you had, in addition to changing compensation, you had changed a couple of other things in here, but we didn't discuss what they were.
Yep.
And so What was it?
I think.
What were you
before,
thinking?
As I looked through, I mean, I reread the entire contract, sure, any changes I was
No.
making. in
Hey, wait, hold on,
That's, this
Leroy, that's what we're gonna be talking about, the other. We got A, B, and
this
C.
is the ones. This final one, which kind of goes back to the original, it's a little bit. Saying that.
So I wanted you to say, to explain to us what this thing. Okay,
Okay, so I read through the entire, reread through the entire contract to make sure that as I was changing compensation, that there wasn't anything else that would contradict. I also, and as I reread it, there were not necessarily, there were a couple places that I made changes that I don't think were necessarily created a contradiction by the change in the form of compensation, but I thought was some clarity. And one of them wasn't for. And I think that really what we need to look at is the original agreement said accordingly, the mayor, with the approval of the town council, may terminate contractor's engagement at any time with or without cause. Okay,
yes,
and then I changed it to say, accordingly, the town council may terminate the contractor's engagement at any time with.
well, wait a minute, no, you first said accordingly, you changed it to say, accordingly, the mayor or the town council may terminate the agreement, that's the one that you had emailed me.
Yeah, and I'm not sure
You emailed me the revised
this
contract,
version or this version.
you're looking at.
Still have dates.
Right, I don't like maybe it's not yours.
I get it, but there's no date. How do you know that that's the first one?
Because there's the one you emailed me.
But I emailed you this one. Too.
But you didn't actually. This is the one you emailed me.
Okay.
So,
Well, this one right here. Accordingly, the mayor or the town council may terminate contractors engagement anytime with or without cause. That's not, that version right there does not comply with the original version.
I agree, but you're made the change, so I was just wondering what you were thinking. Because I didn't ask you to make the change, you made the change, so I just wondered, what were you thinking?
I don't know what I was thinking, other than I'm trying to make it so that it matches the two. And really, the difference is, I think it's a distinct, a difference without.
Distinction without a difference.
Distinction without a difference.
Okay,
Because, whether or not this version right here, that you're having your mayor or town council said that you unilaterally have the right to terminate.
right, that's how that reads.
But that's not what his original
No,
contract
it didn't.
had, nor,
And I'd add that when I first took the job, that was my big concern, even with previous mayor.
Okay,
Taking on a contract, I didn't want to mess with one person, people just not be pissed off at me, so it had to go through the field, so that was,
okay, so,
that's why I was done that.
okay,
Where's the
so
guy?
we had, so then I gave Gene the contract and I said, here's the thing from Heath, sign it. He said, I'm gonna go home and read it. I said, okay, fine.
I met with Gene sometime afterwards to discuss the STR submittals that we're working on. But I don't remember if we talked about your contract at all.
Yeah, we briefly did.
So anyway,
It could have came from generated from that.
okay, because then when we met last week, Gene came in and said, okay, here's the contract, because he wanted to see his original contract to compare, and I gave him the contract, and I said, here, go compare. And
See, we
then,
all have a little longer,
oh, what?
little longer.
And so, so I gave him the original and said, you're fine, and then Gene came in the other day and gave me the one, and said, here, and it's signed, and so I just signed it.
Yeah,
And
well,
I didn't realize there had been another change, and nobody told me, nobody said a word to me about the fact that there'd been another change.
I think another point to make is that in our ordinance, not in this contract, but in our ordinance, the section that creates the position of zoning administrator, that is a position created by ordinance, which indicates that the appointment is by by the mayor with advice and consent of council. I think it's with the language that says. So I've always taken the position that you can terminate by the same way you can appoint.
I have no disagreement with that, that's not my point. My point is that the language was changed and I was never told. That's my issue. So this contract, and I was just handed the contract. I just assumed it was the same contract that I had printed out and given to him, and then it got changed. And
That's part of
that's,
the reason I apologize, because I thought on our Thursday meeting, I mentioned to you that
no, you just gave it to me and said here. And I was just concerned because nobody told me that there had been, oh, I hate this time of year when the sun comes in that transom.
that was my concern. The rest, I saw what he was trying to do, was moving stuff around to make sure that it's, that I don't get benefits.
So what do you want to do, vote that contract, or are you okay with it? If you're okay with
You
it, let's
guys-
move on.
We're about to be done with it. We have to decide, we have to vote on it. And if you guys vote on it, then I will finish up my signature, because I didn't date my signature. And then Crystal will sign it. So you guys decide what you're gonna do. Move on. Decide. I've done, I've said everything I'm gonna say.
I move that we ratify the contract executed on March 14, 2023 by zoning administrator Gene Garate and also signed by member of Council.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Well, she can't vote on it because it's a conflict of interest for him, but,
Does this mean?
does this need a roll call vote since it's a contract? Yes, okay. Paul,
Aye.
Missy,
Aye.
Jean, I, and, Leroy.
Aye.
All right, next item. Item which I now have numbered from B to I, should have been an I. Discussion of ordinance 2023 whatever this, the next number. An ordinance amending and restating Lulu chapter 16. Now, what I put on the agenda and the way he titled it is slightly different, but it's still the same thing. Amending some sections of chapter 16. So this is for us to discuss and then send, the goal is we will be sending this off to planning commission for them to have a public hearing at their next meeting. So,
Would you like me to give you a little?
yes, give us your
So if you guys,
take on
if
this.
you guys can look at this. Everything in blue. It's a little long, but that's because it's an amendment restatement. So I'm restating everything in the first part of chapter 16 from section 1, which didn't have a section number, even though it had subsections. And it automatically started with 16.02. There was this section on nature of conditional use permit. I gave it that title, but these things dropped in right there at the very beginning. So I made it section 1 of chapter 16, and those A, B, and C were already part of our ordinance, so there was no changes there. I gave it a name, 16.01, and I called it the nature of conditional use permit.
So hold on, so
Okay.
that's the ordinance. You're reading for the ordinance with all the stuff that's in blue,
So,
but you also said.
yeah, I gave you guys the red line version here.
Yeah.
Which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's, part of it though, I get somewhat concerned having you guys look at red lines, because sometimes if I'm gonna do an amendment or restatement, and frankly, I didn't draft chapter 16, all of it, and I drafted the sections where we created the level 1, level 2, which we're now taking out. But I did move some things around so that it seemingly read easier. And so sometimes you're gonna see a lot of red, but that's because I deleted it here.
Yep.
And I moved it here. So it's, but if you guys can catch up, I mean, clearly I went through and anywhere where I talked about level 1 CUP and level 2 CUP, that modifier was deleted. So it's just CUP throughout the entire thing. But what I did do, as you can see, I wanted to, and I'm in 16.01, under C. I made a couple of small changes in how we dealt with, but it does allow for the establishment deadline. We create.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have, you have to, if we give a conditions permit in the town, you have 1 year to establish the use. And we create the ability for the zoning administrator to modify that 1 year commencement if it says that we can either modify it at the time of giving the conditional use permit if the applicant tells us, hey, it's gonna take me time, I'm gonna have to phase this use in, I'm gonna have to build structures, and I'm not gonna build them all at once or something like that. So we can give a phase commencement date, or the zoning administrator, the planning administrator has the ability to modify that. So I made some clarities into 16.02. I made sure this ordinance in 16.02 had, it used the term CUP or use, the word use throughout. And we have defined in chapter 2 of our BULU, the term conditional use, and there's a definition of it. So I tried to use, if you'll notice, I changed anywhere where it said use. I either put in the word conditional and made it both capitalized, so we're using that defined term throughout there. And I want to make it clear, and 1602 attempts to say this is when you need a new conditional use permit and when you don't. Obviously, anytime there's going to be new construction involved where the use is going to be housed, that's going to require it. If you're going to expand a building or structure where the conditional use is going to be housed, that requires a conditional use or an amendment to an existing thing, or if there's going to be a substantial change in use. If the use is one type of conditional use and they're going to some other type of use, it's completely different, you need to get a new conditional use permit. But it's clear under 1602B, I tried to be clear what is not. And that's really if the use and the existing permit is compatible with, for instance, a good example would be if someone had a conditional use permit to put a gas station down here, okay, and they decide they want to sell the gas station, new owner comes in. He may want to do a couple of things that are slightly different. Maybe he wants to sell a few more automotive type items within the convenience portion of the gas station instead of foodstuffs. Is that significantly different? And would we need to issue a new conditional use permit? My point would be, it says here under 1602B2, the proposed conditional use is similar or compatible with the current use identified in the CUP issued to the property without additional impact to the surrounding area, as determined by the zoning administrator. So we had to have someone who makes the determination of whether or not that is
What section is that?
that's 1602B2. And that wasn't changed, that same thing, that was language from before. But I did clarify it a little bit too. So 1604 stays about the same. I do want to tell you, the version I sent over, I used, I broke up the conditional use permit application process and made a separate conditional use permit review and approval process. So 1604 got split up into 1604 and 1605. You can see because that was, I don't know how this got drafted, but if Paul, if you look at the numbering, it's 1602,
Everything even
1604,
numbers, yeah,
1606.
yes.
We had like skipped like.
All
even numbers. Most of them. And I thought about consolidating them all down, but I thought, okay, that's gonna make everything red here. And it might confuse people, and I don't know if there's any cross references to old section numbers. We could spend a lot of time properly, just to really, just to consolidate into 1601, 1602, 1603, 1604, 1605 sequentially. So I did, other than I added this new section 1605, because it was available.
Okay.
But basically I said, here's the process. The process is, this is what you have to submit. And we really didn't change in 1604, the application process. And I didn't make a lot of changes to what the development plan has to contain. James probably most familiar with this because he deals with this. I made one change and I moved up this staff application completeness review. And those of you who sat in the last appeal hearing, one of the arguments was being made, the reviews to be done by the clerk. And I kept asking the appellate say, well, but it says that one of the things to determine completeness is all these additional items of information or studies that the zoning administrator could require. So isn't he involved in the review of completeness as well? So you notice what I did is I put upon the filing of the conditional use permit application. This is 1604 C, the very last paragraph on page 3 at the very top. Upon the filing of the conditional use permit application with the town clerk and payment received for conditional use permit application filing fees, the conditional use application will be reviewed by the town staff, including the zoning administrator, for completeness. After the town staff determine the application to comply with the filing requirements of subsection A above, the conditional use permit application will proceed to the conditional use permit review and approval process. And that is this new 1605. And so what I did was I created a two-step process. And Mayor, what I talked to you about was in most municipalities for a lot of different types of land use approvals, before you can even get on a planning commission agenda or council agenda, you have to go through the city's. A lot of them use different terms, but the most common is joint utility board, joint utility committee, or planning staff review type process, okay? And I have created our other resolution that we're going to look at today is the creation of this joint utility. And as I was drafting this one first, I called it the joint utility board, the JUB, because I liked it. Everyone uses JUC. Hurricane, St. George City, Ivan, Santa Clara, they all use JUC. I thought, a little bit different. We're gonna call it JUB.
Because we're virgin.
It's different. But then as I got looking at it, I got thinking about a board and versus a committee. And really what happens in the JUC is a committee type arrangement or format. It's a little more informal. And really what we're doing is we're giving feedback, and we'll get into that. But what will happen is that I deleted all the sections about the zoning administrator's determination of level 1, level 2. That's what the rest of page 3 is about. And then we get into the new section A, which is called the CUP preliminary review process. Upon this, and so on page 4 towards the top, A1, upon the CUP application being deemed complete by town staff, application shall be placed on the agenda for the next joint utility board. That should be now a joint utility committee meeting and the joint and JUC meeting. At the JUC meeting, the CUP application will receive preliminary review and feedback will be given to the applicant by members of the JUC. At the conclusion of the CUP preliminary review, the zoning administrator shall issue a CUP preliminary review report and recommendation.
We got a question on this next part.
Okay, should the JUC determine that additional information, plans, or studies are needed, it may require the applicant to provide such prior to said report or recommendation.
So we are making this board of individuals who may or may not even reside in the town, giving them authority to determine if something can be built.
Oh, no, that's really not, so.
I mean, it's what it says. I get that it says over here, the zoning administrator gets all this stuff, but this is saying if that board determines.
So if you will read, the report recommendation is only issued by the zoning administrator.
It's in there,
Okay.
it says that.
So envision.
It's getting good advice, I get it. It's-
Yeah, envision, it's more of a vetting process, because if you've got the fire district there, who's looking, and they're all versed on fire code, stuff like that, and you've got Rocky Mountain Power there. And, representative, and they actually come to the other cities, JUC meetings, and they sit there, and you've got water. And someone's gonna say, well, you're gonna need a hydrant here. You don't have a hydrant, you need to show a hydrant on your plan, it's not within, and they look at it and measure out and say, yeah, it's not within 500 feet, you're gonna have to add an extra hydrant. So like, all those things get fleshed out.
Crystal, do you have this to put up there so they can see it?
Put the old one up there. Put the old one up there. So people can see it.
No, that makes sense. It actually would speed up the process because right now I have to reach out to these people or send the applicant.
Yeah,
to them.
and the concept is that it's a streamlined process because there's two things that happen. If you're having a regular JUC, and if you look in the resolution that I created, it says that the JUC is to meet as frequently as necessary, but no less than once per month. And so when you have the JUC meetings, you're gonna get all these people, and we're gonna try to be flexible to allow, if some of them need to appear remotely, they can. But you're gonna get construction plans signed off by people. I mean, and I've been to plenty of JUC meetings where I've got, if I'm in St. George, it's hilarious because you've got, if I'm the landowner or the developer and I've got my engineer with me, we come to the JUC meeting and we sit down and wait, and they're passing sets of plans around. A lot of them are signing off on different plans and stuff like that, but then they look up and you start to make your presentation, or your engineer makes your presentation, and they start telling you what are some possible problems. Well, I don't know, that road, that's gonna be a fire access road. And you've gotta have that connect, you've gotta have a second access there, the fire code says that. And crap, so engineers are like making notes of this. Okay, I need to amend our plan. And a lot of times what they do is they come into JUC before they actually submit their preliminary plat for a subdivision.
No, it
And
makes sense.
it fleshes out a lot of stuff. So their plans, their application are much more refined. And then out of it is created the staff recommendation, because what we want to get to is, Gene, we want to get to a situation where planning commission, you stand up there, and item number 3 is, okay, you say, so-and-so has applied for a preliminary plat for a 14 lot subdivision called such and such. This went to the joint utility JUC, and there was some discussion about this. I've made my staff recommendation. Let me tell you, I've gone through and compared it to the criteria for approving a subdivision, and it meets this, and this. We would recommend that it be approved with the following conditions: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And if there's any questions, you can ask the applicant. Gene sits down, applicant stands up, planning commission is totally prepared with everything, because Gene sat there as part of his job, looked through, analyzed all this. He sat through and listened to utility providers, whoever. As we get bigger, we're gonna probably have a dedicated public works director. He's gonna know where all the water lines are, if there's any sort of, you know, utility incongruences that need to be modified, things like that. And, you know, maybe the applicant gets up and answers a couple of questions, sits down, and says, okay, I make a motion that we recommend approval subject to staff recommendation with all conditions. Boom, we go there.
So just so you know, when Heath and I were talking about this at his office the other day, I said, oh, as he was explaining about the meetings. I said, oh, well, when I was talking with the fire district a year ago, they said Virgin does everything backward from every other town that they build.
Of course.
And, yeah, and I laughed, and so as Heath and I were talking about this, I said, oh, so this is what the fire district, the fire chief meant when he said we do everything backward. That this will fix that.
Okay,
Now
so-
it'll be the same trip.
So to get to this.
Yeah.
I'm on page 4, I'm in A2, it says. The conditions for preliminary review report recommendation shall contain the following: a brief summary of the conditions being proposed, a list of the likely adverse effects surrounding the area that were identified by the JP during the review process, a compliance analysis and discussion of the proposed condition of use in relation to each general CUP review criteria, a compliance analysis and discussion of proposed conditions in relation to each applicable set of standards required for specific, because we have certain types of uses, we have some specific criteria for, like RV parks. Have a special set of criteria that in addition to the general criteria. And so, Gene, I would envision that your staff recommendation, just copy and paste those criteria and maybe make 1 or 2 sentences to each of those things. Okay? That would just be your compliance analysis. And then you need to end with under E, a recommendation to the planning and zoning commission on whether to approve or deny or approve with conditions, the CUP application. And then F, a list of all conditions the zoning administrator with input from the JUC believe are reasonable, necessary to mitigate the likely adverse effects of the proposed condition use. Okay, so then, once that's been done, then we go under B, which is the final review and determination or approval of it. B, upon completion of the CUP preliminary review, the zoning administrators and the zoning administrators issuance of the CUP preliminary review report and recommendation. Now, this is straight from our ordinance, the rest of the town clerk puts it on the planning commission. It's the process that was prescribed for level 2 CUPs. Everything is just, there's not a level 1 or level 2. They're just they all go to the planning commission with a very detailed work through the JUC process with the zoning administrator's recommendation and recommended conditions of approval, okay? And you know, that's really what page 5, all the rest of that B is talking about the process at the planning commission. They conduct a public hearing, they send out notice. As part of the final review, the planning and zoning commission shall closely consider the CUP preliminary review report recommendation and expected the zoning administrator's recommendation and proposed conditions. That's 6.
So the reason you had the word especially there, because I wasn't sure I liked the word especially, but is there a reason you had that there? Because a while ago you were saying that they could recommend based on this report with these conditions and they got recommend.
Well, okay, here's my thing. And this is no knock on our current planning commission, because I see it in 2 other planning commissions that municipalities that represent. I see planning commissions in more rural municipalities made up of individuals that their line of work or whatever is not necessarily development and those kind of things. If I walk into a St. George City Planning Commission meeting, I'm looking at a commercial real estate broker sitting up there, I'm looking at a general contractor who's a commercial contractor. I'm looking at a couple of, one works for, he's an engineer. And so they kind of come from their background and they understand a lot of the process. But I get situations where it appears to me that the planning commission maybe read it as the item was called on the agenda, and maybe read it hour before and hadn't put a lot of thought to it. I'm hoping that our staff, Gene, who's now paid salaried independent contractor working as an administrator, independent, is giving an unbiased and clear analysis of whether it complies with our ordinances and what are some likely detrimental effects and how we can mitigate those. That's why this kind of use is probably a conditional use. And that he's gonna have well thought through conditions. And that his analysis of compliance is probably a lot more thought through than planning commissioners looking at it kind of like on the spot, on the fly type thing, unless they were guys like engineers who do this for a living on the other side of the table in other municipalities. So I think that I wanted to put some emphasis that especially be considered by the planning commission. It doesn't say they have to follow the
No,
regulations.
I agree.
And I wanted to put in the ordinance that there would be some emphasis that they rely on staff. We've gotten this way more in Tokerville, and I still see my planning commission think that they've got to like put their 2 bits in on stuff that they have no business and no idea, no expertise on what they're doing. And I've got an assistant city manager who's an engineer by background. I've got a city manager who used to be the business manager for a large engineering firm in town who did construction contracting and took projects all the way through the entitlement process. And they've got another full-time employee, so they got 3 staff members looking at all these different things. And I got a planning commission out there and said, and the ordinance drafted by me, and I've got planning commission saying, I don't know if I like the repealer language. Really, seriously, because the mindset, it is in a small municipality that you have to have staff by committee. The planning commission has had to have been, in a lot of ways, the staff in the past, but we've got someone like Gene now, and in Tokerville, we've got 3 staff members, and they need to start relying upon the expertise of staff. Or they won't be led astray.
I agree that they need to start relying on staff, because I would like. I have things I want to go, I have goals.
Before we get too much further, I have this question. And I talked about it in public as well as with you in the past. The concern I have, first of all, the CUP doesn't even have to have a public hearing, but the second part is, the public hearing happens before a board of people that don't even have to read the set of plans in front of them or the criteria. They start acting like just what you said, where they feel like they have to add stuff because the public clamor is making them nervous and feel uncomfortable. Is there any reason the JUC could not meet, discuss, and then open it up?
Well, okay, so if you want to read the resolution, the resolution creating the JUC makes the zoning administrator the chair. It says that it has to comply, it's a public meeting, public has the right to be present, and that at the discretion of the chair, that they can give comment if he wants to take it from the member of the public. You could have 15 people in here sitting there watching the JUC reviewing a proposed development. And if you wanted to take their input, you could. It is another way, but it's not per se a quote unquote public hearing. You're right. Conditional use permits do not require a public hearing under Utah state law. However, under our ordinance, it always has. And I think that usually, if you think about the reason why it's considered a conditional use permit, its uses are probably a little bit more intrusive upon neighboring uses than just permitted uses are. And we've always taken the approach of, hey, let your neighbors know what's gonna go on. And not to the extent that mob rule should control, or public plan should control, but at least maybe help in the identification of some possible detrimental effects.
Exactly. So that's my point, is why couldn't we rewrite this to say, we're gonna do a public hearing along with the JUC, so the professionals are there, the public can ask them directly.
Frankly, we're out of respect, we're asking representatives from the fire district. We could have, from the water district, a representative from the water district show up. If and when we would ever join, become part of Ash Creek, the sewer district would have a representative there. You're gonna have Rocky Mountain Power, and you could have any of your, you get TDS and,
CenturyLink.
yeah, CenturyLink. At these, sometimes those people will be there remotely, but to have a public hearing process, you guys know how long public hearings can take, if everyone wants to give their feedback. Now, maybe you can run the public hearing at JUC quickly, but I think out of respect to the professionals who are going to be there as ex officio members of your JUC, they're there because they're the appointed representative from their district or from their power company that they work for, whoever, out of respect for them, that we don't necessarily put them through. We're looking for their feedback. But not necessarily the public's. If there are anything that you missed in your recommendation of conditions, say during the public hearing of the planning commission, something comes up and there is some sort of possible detrimental effect that you hadn't thought of, or the JUC hadn't discussed before, maybe the planning commission can model and it can create an additional condition that can be added to the CUP. But the vast 90% of the conditions will be coming from.
But the public hearing needs to be held before a body that's the town, town
Yeah, and that's the thing
designated
too,
member,
because
not these.
I like,
Right, but I.
the planning commission is the recommending body. And council is the legislative body, and the land use authority wants to delegate. We are delegating the authority to the planning commission. In our CUPs, which is pretty common. Most municipalities, you don't see conditional use permits going to city council. Your plan, most cities have their planning commission deal with CUPs. City council will deal with subdivision plats, commercial site plans, zone changes, general plan amendments.
Most cities that you represent, they have a conditional use permit, open a public hearing before the commission.
No, you're the only one.
Then I'd suggest we remove.
I know.
So if we're gonna do things like other towns, they're gonna do all this stuff, then why are we punishing or?
We're not
It's not
touching.
really punishing, and you,
It is.
it's what you said, I have sat through them, yes, I have, and I've actually liked them.
But you look at our past
But-
conditional use permits, and you see the stuff that's written in there, that's written in the moment of a motion, because the
There were some
commission.
really great suggestions brought forth, like living
Sometimes.
barriers instead of walls and things like that, and those will all come directly from the public.
Right, and I'm not against that, that's my whole point, you know the meeting you're talking about with that, how long was that meeting?
It was
you
not
got
just one, it was several.
But we got one comment and then everybody left.
Right.
I don't think you can do that without putting that on the commission.
Hmm.
Plus, it helps me to be able to write recommendations by listening to the public, getting all that information for it. Now, that doesn't mean they still couldn't talk, but I'm saying, why are we having, if we're trying to do this to be like other towns, then why are we not gonna be like other towns all the way?
And philosophically, I disagree. And I've had this conversation with Pete. I think it comes down, my preference would be a hearing before the planning commission with the recommendation to the town council. The town council then decides on the conditional use permit. And that's a legislative decision. And I've always felt that until you get big enough, like St. George or Salt Lake, we're a small town, that decision should be made by the elected official instead of delegating it down. Now, either way is good. As far as you're concerned, I think you need to get the public their input and have to say. And
It's fair, is the question.
and at the planning, the thing with the excuse me if I call it DRC, because that's what I'm used to calling it. Design and Review. It's the JUC. That allows the informal conversation with you and the utilities without the public being involved unless you want to. Then you get to develop your conditions. You don't have to do it right there. You could do it later, or you could do it right there. It gets it all focused, and then when it goes up to the planning commission to look at, they have your recommendation. The public has they can see what you're focusing on, and it helps the focus. Maybe a
Public comment.
Yeah, it helps the public comment focus. Otherwise, you got public comment all over.
I think my opinion is that I have seen where this review and recommendation, or report recommendation from staff gets discussed openly in the planning commission before the public hearing is open. And it's fascinating that the planning commission or that the public who stand up to comment oftentimes focus directly on the things that staff has pointed out as likely detrimental effects that there needs to be some sort of. I think it focuses.
And I think it's good to put it on put the public hearing during the JUC.
That's wasting
Because-
time.
Well, it is, it's wasting their time, and a lot of times if it's an electric company or something like that, they're bound by policy. So you can't argue it back and forth. I don't think, I agree with Keith, I don't think it's respectful to have,
Yeah, they have their own internal
we
standards.
can't argue it, and so it should be done with our planning and zoning commission, because they are the ones needed to be argued.
But I'm all about, I am, as you know, I'm all about letting the public have a say, and I would not vote for anything that takes out a public hearing away from the people having, even though it's administrative, I know,
Do you
I
understand?
believe we understand the difference.
You understand, I'm not suggesting removing that.
Yeah, but you want to do it in the other place instead of PNC.
Right,
Yeah, I understand.
I think the public does have input, and what you're talking about, that specific one, that was great. I've since lauded that, and been saying, hey, I'm so glad you did that. That might be a waste, except for you guys coming in and saying, hey, here's an idea that maybe we can mitigate and be able to do it.
Well,
I think that's wonderful. It's just a public clamor, really.
our electric
For
company
use.
should not have to sit
I
through
agree.
All this.
those conversations.
But we've, as you know, over all these years, we've had these controversies and these things that happen in the public hearing. And as he said, if this focuses the comments that are coming from the public at the meeting, it might actually make things better.
I think it focuses.
It just
everybody.
might.
It
We
focuses on the
can
plan.
always find out, well, we're trying.
Can I make a suggestion anyway? We got changes here at the last minute. I'd really like to read through this.
Oh, this is for discussion. This is a.
Okay, good. I was.
Because this is an amendment, this is an amendment to our land use ordinance, which requires a public hearing at the planning commission.
Right.
Yeah.
So I,
Again, before we send it to them.
yeah, I wanted to go through this with you guys quickly, so that you guys can feel comfortable with what the planning commission was.
Well, 90% there. It's not my real concerns. Yeah, sorry, we need to derail.
No, so, okay,
I have.
I put in here, I kept, but I moved the, CUP. The conditional use standard of review, the town shall not issue a CUP unless the planning and zoning commission concludes that the CUP application with possible conditions to fully mitigate all identified adverse, impacts and complies with the following general standards for all conditional uses. And so then we go through, we list the general standards. A little bit further down, I have the appeal process. And there's a difference between appealing the determination whether to grant or deny, or grant with approval. That's 1606. 1608 is the appeal process if you were to revoke, suspend, or nullify. Nullification would only be if they don't establish their use within the establishment period. That, then we would be nullifying the permit because you never got it off the ground. Revocation is if they're not complying. And I created a process that in which the zoning administrator makes that determination. And then if the permit holder doesn't like it, they can appeal it. And that's how it goes. Appeals of the decision to initially approve it or deny it with conditions goes to the appeal court. Okay, the decision to revoke, suspend, or nullify an existing permit goes to the council. Okay, and that's the difference. There's reasoning why we're doing that, because one is they don't have an entitlement to the permit. But once they've gotten the permit and we're going to revoke it or terminate it or void it, we're basically getting rid of a property right. And at that point in time, I want our governing body making that decision. And I want, there's sort of due process rights that need to be respected in that process. So that's what I dealt with in there, and I put, there's a standard of review.
Did you add
There.
language from the last appeal that says who's eligible to?
Yes, it says adversely affected.
So if you notice, I added, one of the things, in addition to making these changes in chapter 16, we changed the definition section when we added in the term adversely affected party, and we use the definition straight from the state code. And I also add in the term utility division. And then we have this resolution that creates it, and so that's what that ordinance is all about.
Okay, let's see, I had one thing,
Ask all your questions.
Thank you.
okay,
Took a little bit of time, but
I had a question. You used the term, I was just looking at in Hulu. You used the term establishment deadline when you were talking about revoking or anything, and those are capitalized, but there's no definition for establishment deadline. I wonder if we need to create a deadline, it's a definition,
It's not in the definition section, it's within the body, but it is a defined term,
where
and that is.
if it's in the ordinance.
Look
defined
under
in the term, that's fine.
1601C. The last sentence of C, not C1, but C. Within
Oh,
1
yes.
year after the date granted, and then parentheses.
Established deadline. Okay.
CUP may be nullified and or voided after its decision by the town council.
Okay, all right, so I'll ask a couple of questions, but some of these, if we're continuing this to next month, so everybody has time to review it. I might be able to just take care of it, and not have to spend our time today on it. But I just had a couple of questions about, well, you answered it already about, why not go to town council? Why are the CUPs being decided by planning commission instead of town council? You already answered that. I talked about that.
First of all, that's the way we have been doing it.
Yes,
Even a level 2 when we went to planning commission. I'm trying, in some ways, I'm trying to keep the process that we followed for a considerable period of time now. Only since 2019 did we have a distinction between a level 1 and a level 2. It's a level 2 went to planning commission, but before then, even conditional permits were going to planning commission. So
oh, I know now, I remember one of the things, and I don't know that this would affect anything about the ordinance, but since we're going with this software where people are going to be actually doing their applications online now, instead of going into the office and saying, give me this form, and they fill it out and hand it over, everything's gonna be online, probably in a month from now.
Okay.
We're real close. And so will that make any difference? I mean, because still the town clerk,
do they have the ability to upload any documents?
they do have the ability to upload documents. It's still when they apply, the way it's been set up right now is if anybody applies for anything, the town clerk, the zoning administrator, and me get automatic notification that there's been an application filed. So
And if
the
you guys
clerk
look
will
at it,
still have the chance to look at it. The zoning administrator will look at
I
it.
still need a site plan.
So I don't know if this makes any difference to what you're saying about filing with the town clerk and pay the fee and this and that. I didn't know if that's gonna make any difference in the way you have this written.
I haven't really thought about that.
Okay, that's something we can think about by next month.
And we've talked a little bit about in this program, one of the concerns is that a completed packet, when people start bringing stuff in, it's a drawing on paper. This is gonna sound so horrible, I'm sorry, Paul, but sometimes it's not the right time to just put that out there so everybody can start screaming and yelling on something that isn't fleshed out. And so we're talking about, so at what point is something then, when the packet's completed and they pay, and it becomes the public domain? Or at what point and how do we work through that stuff without being?
So I would strongly recommend is you guys get some soft inquiries. Crystal, when you get a soft inquiry, or Gene, you get a soft inquiry, or any member of the council say, I think the first step you guys ought to take is get on the JUC agenda. They meet third Wednesday, second and fourth Wednesday of every month, or however you guys, often you guys are meeting. And let them bring their proposal and get it picked apart. You know what I mean?
Okay.
All that they're doing. And then when they feel like they've got all the kinks worked out, then submit it in the application thing, because only then, and that's the way I think we need to be telling all these developers is, because I'm gonna tell you, I mean, that's gonna help you say, it's not you having all the discussion with the developer, it's the developer having the discussion with you and the town engineer and representative from Rocky Mountain Power, representative from Hurricane Valley Fire District. And everybody is giving them the input. You're just turning around at the end of that, you're saying, okay, you're taking notes here and you're gonna give them this, and they're gonna walk away from it with notes, too, saying, geez, we need to change that before we're even ready for submit. Absolutely. Okay.
I just was, I know that comes into the three of us, but at what point does something become a public document versus still being fleshed out? Because that isn't, I know sometimes it's been brought up to me by developers, that is my property until I pay for that application. You can look at it, but that's not public until I pay for my application. If you follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're asking for a review of it, you're saying, well, can you give me some idea where I need to go in this house? Can I do this house this high with this kind of roof, whatever? I can look at it quickly, but I hand it back and it's nothing I
See,
see.
yeah, and that kind of stuff presented on a conceptual basis at a JUC meeting,
We eliminate that.
you eliminate that.
What about the software that they?
But under the software, if they submit anything that's submitted in the possession of the city, is subject to ground. rent.
But-
And I don't agree that it's only a public record once they pay a fee to start the process.
That's what I
If you submit it to the city, it's in our possession.
So they start you with that, okay. All right, so do we need to discuss this some more, or shall we just continue this? Okay. Okay, all right,
First of all, thank you, Dee. It's fantastic, it's carrying through with what we said in our appeal determination. I do have a couple questions. First of all, I'm assuming that, I love the review committee. Until I got to use in your term.
Hey, you know what? I can change it. If you want me,
I like DRC better because it's not all utilities, it's other individuals coming in. And my wife used to work and run these all the time.
well, we,
design review.
No, development review.
Development review.
Development review.
Heath and I talked about, when we met at his office last week, and we were talking about a process for review. We talked about putting it in code and creating another chapter like design review. And I looked at chapter 20, which has been eliminated, was a design review, so we could call it.
And I looked at that and I thought, I sat here and thought, look,
The sign's different.
Design sounds like an HOA. Sorry, it just.
The signs usually are the architectural.
This is what I'm saying,
I like development review committee. I think as long as we call it committee, I don't want to call it a board. I don't want people to be board members. And because I don't want them to, because their role in, at least for the ex officio members, that's representatives from districts and power companies and utility providers. They are providing only professional feedback and support, guidance, input to it. And it's a committee.
but when we talked about this, we were talked about, when I talked about how is this process going to work? And we talked about creating a code,
So.
and so we talked about where are the chapters.
Okay, so I looked at that and I thought to myself, do we want to make this a formal process in our ordinance, or do we want to create this by resolution? Now, you notice we were talking about this committee to delve out funds for, indigent utility things. there's a lot of different types of committees and boards that, the council can create. I didn't know if we wanted to make this firm and set in stone, and if we did, we could make it an ordinance and we could slot it into a section or thing, but if you look at my resolution that I sent over this evening. You wanna pull that one up?
Yep. Oh, Dr. Crystal.
I can just as easily call this an ordinance, and I can say here, we're creating chapter 20 of Hulu, and it shall hereby state, and I will give it 20.01, instead of having this item A, stuff like that, I can just give it the proper numbering like we do the rest of Hulu.
So I think the board is so far. Posting up there, that's one of the things.
Yes, it would be codified into it.
That's, I would prefer.
But, Gene, did you have a chance to see this?
I haven't, I don't know.
No, that's why I was gonna continue it.
But I do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind, because I think it'll either have to change one way or the other.
Okay.
This almost feels like it could be applied right straight to any type of development, regardless of whether it's a CUP, if it's a building.
Yeah, well, yeah.
I-
That's why she was asking me, well, do we want to put this whole stuff, this whole arrangement into chapter 16? I said, no, because the JUC is going to be looking at other types of land use applications other than just conditional use permits. So if I can,
That's what I
the
wanted.
easiest thing to do, this might be jumping ahead on the agenda, but this resolution, which can easily become an ordinance, and it can be an ordinance creating chapter 20. You give everyone a copy of it.
Yes, we all did.
Hey. I spent most of the day yesterday drafting this one, the day drafting this one. And the town isn't the only client I have. So, I told, what did I tell the mayor? I said, I might get one of them done, I can't guarantee that I'm ready to.
I was very surprised that he got, yeah.
So that we can at least be discussing this.
Okay, there.
So page 2, when I put some additional recitals in, I hadn't done recitals for the other one, but page 2, A, establishment of the JUC, we can call it DRC, Development Review Committee. There is hereby established within Virgin Town a committee to be known as the Virgin Joint Utility Committee, or JUC. Purposes of the JUC, the purpose of the Virgin Joint Utility Committee is to streamline the review process of various types of land use and development applications being considered or proposed within the town, and to coordinate and ensure that all aspects of the Virgin Uniform Land Use Ordinance, VULU, and the Virgin standards and specifications for public improvements and the uniform building and safety codes adopted by the town and the various standards and specifications of public, private, and government entities providing utility and other special services within the town are complied with. C, the members of the JUC, the standing members of the Virgin Joint Utility Committee are as follows. A, the Virgin Town Zoning Administrator, B, the Virgin Town Engineer, C, the Virgin Town Public Works Director, or town employee who is tasked with responsibility of overseeing and maintaining the roads, rights of way, water system, parks, properties, and public improvements of the town.
I see you excluded yourself on that list.
You want to pay half, you want to pay half. I think from a technical standpoint, you're better spending your money on your engineer than having your attorney. Okay, C, little Roman 2, the ex officio members of the Virgin Joint Utility Committee are as follows. An authorized representative from the Hurricane Valley Fire District, an authorized representative from the other special service districts or county agencies which provide special services to the areas of the town. And C, authorized representative from all public and private utility companies providing utility services to areas of the town. D, the chair of the JUC, Virgin Town Zoning Administrator shall be the chair or chairperson of the Virgin Joint Utility Committee with power to determine the order and content of the agendas for and call to order and conduct and adjourn each meeting of the JUC. E, JUC meetings and meeting procedure, the Virgin Joint Utility Committee shall meet as frequently as needed and in no instance less than once per month.
The main concern right there. Just CUPs and commercial building, we don't get stuff every month. In fact,
Yeah,
we might go 6 months, 8 months a year between CUPs or.
Hold on, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get to this, okay? So, it says, shall meet as frequently as needed, no instance less than once per month. The date and time of the JUC meeting shall be set by the chair with input from its members. The JUC meeting shall be held on the same days of the week or month, as well as the same time, the same location, so as to create confidence and consistency. All JUC meetings shall be open to the public for observation only, with comment and input from the public being allowed at the discretion of the JUC chair. All JUC meetings shall observe the notice and procedural requirements detailed in the Public Meetings Act. Notwithstanding the proceeding, the formality of the JUC meeting shall be relaxed with the intent of stimulating constructive discussion and input between landowners, developers, their professional staff, and the JUC. In this vein, attendance at JUC meetings by its members or participants may be accomplished by remote electronic attendance. JUC duties and powers before an applicable, this is a defined term, an applicable land use application defined below is placed on the agenda of the Virgin Planning and Zoning Commission or the town council for a public hearing, recommendation, and or approval. The sponsor of the application or their authorized agent must present a summary of their land use application to the JUC and answer specific questions posed by the JUC members related thereto. The JUC may hear presentations and provide feedback to persons or entities who have not yet formally submitted an applicable land use application, but rather seeking direction on the best way to accomplish their development and land use objectives in compliance with GURU, our standards, safety codes, and etc. I report and recommendation. If after attending and presenting to the JUC, a landowner or developer wishes to proceed with an applicable land use application, again defined below, the zoning administrator shall prepare a JUC preliminary review report and recommendation, which shall be provided to the planning and zoning commission, and the town council for assistance and guidance with their review and possible approval or denial. The JUC preliminary review report and recommendation shall, at the very least, contain the following: a compliance analysis with the applicable standards and criteria for approving land use application as set forth in GURU, a recommendation to approve, deny, or approve with conditions, and if applicable, a list of all recommended conditions of approval as suggested by the JUC. Okay, now, little Roman 2, applicable land use applications. This is where the JUC looks at, okay, for purposes of this resolution, the following are deemed to be applicable land use applications, which require a preliminary review by the JUC. A, conditional use permits and amendments involving the construction of new buildings, structures, or improvements, subdivisions and amendments, both commercial and residential and commercial. C, commercial site plans and amendments to commercial site plans. D, lot line adjustments, and E, road dedications. If you can think of anything else, I'd be open to it. Then the last part of the JUC's duties and powers is the sign off and approval construction plan. Once an applicable land use application has been approved by either the town council or the planning commission, which all of those would be town council except for CUPs, which is A, then it's the planning commission. Acting as a land use authority, a landowner or developer for or their authorized agent must obtain approval signatures on the construction plans, which is a defined term in our ordinance, from the town and each ex officio member of the JUC prior to starting construction of the building structure, building common structure improvements that was contemplated as part of the applicable land use application and prior to the recording of any final plat, site plan, or record of survey that is the subject of the applicable land use application. So they're reviewing, giving feedback. You're giving a kind of a synopsis, recommendation, review, recommendation, report, recommendation, and then they're signing off on all construction plans.
Okay, what do you have to say, Paul? You had a look on your face.
No, I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of analysis out there you can look at and create your own template for it. Just a couple of questions on this. It's on 1606. Appeal, A, right of appeal.
Yeah.
Technically, the way I read this is everybody has a right to appeal once We have a defined what is considered determined, it's when it is issued in written format, and signed signed by the planning and zoning commission chair. My problem is a lot of times that may not occur at the meeting and may occur later, and how does the public know? So when you redraft this at DRC and when you redraft this, we think and post it on the public notice website,
Absolutely.
because that way it prevents people calling in to just so on that they.
That was the question that I always had about level one.
Yeah,
When did a adversely affected party, when did their appeal rights start? Because they would have never known when Gene issued a level one CUP, except for the fact when it got posted on the public notice website. Then under Utah law, everyone's deemed to be on at least constructive notice of the existence of that CUP. So I like the idea, has to be issued in writing and posted. So we can always look to the post date.
Yes, for the date that starts to run the time to appeal.
and then the other one I have, these all minor, but when you do the appeal, so it's the next one down on filing of the appeal.
Okay.
The issue that I've seen with individuals that appeal is they gotta pay the fee, no problem, they gotta say what their reason they're appealing. The problem is then we require them to provide all their documents. Now, a lot of times, some documents have already been submitted or in CD files, and then you've got to get them from Crystal.
Yeah, that was part of the question that I had about
Yeah,
all the supplemental stuff that April and Warren wanted to submit.
Yeah.
That wasn't technically compliance.
yeah,
Yes,
with the
but.
ordinance.
we have-
Yes,
let's get it done.
all grounds and documents, the basis for your appeal at the time you submit your appeal. And they didn't do that. They dropped a great big huge supplemental.
Well, they had no way to
They had to
get
make
that
ground-
15
they had to
days.
make
Yeah,
ground.
they had no way to get it 15.
Okay, well then, how does,
I'm looking at it from the flip side too, Heath, because sometimes when somebody comes in to do additional things to their CUP or otherwise, it requires them to get all that stuff again. So like a person like Jared, he has to resubmit all of his soil testing. It's the same thing. We already have it, but it's a required document.
oh, I get it.
So-
And that wasn't what my
So
concern is.
it's the same idea. It's each time.
There are arguments where they argued that they hadn't submitted everything they needed to get the CUP.
Right.
If we already had a copy of that on file because it was project based and not just related to phase 7, I don't think that that's.
Remember, this new software is gonna have projects and we have phases of the projects.
But I think the same thing. Why are we asking somebody to also appeal?
Okay, so with that too, though. I've got a permit holder. Let's talk about conditional permits. But even a recipient of a zone change or the recipient of a final plat approval for a subdivision, and someone comes in and appeals it. Okay? They have some brief statement of what the basis of their argument is, but then if they have some ability to kind of like add and augment to it.
Yeah.
I've got someone here who has a vested right at that point. They've been given approval and some adversely affected parties. They've got to know how they can defend their property right. And if it's an ever moving target, because it can be continuously supplemented right up to the hearing. Is that due process for both sides? I don't know that it is. And so I don't know how to balance both rights of people. Unless we do it something quick, longer than 45 days, but then you got people who say. I don't want my project held up for 45 days. If I try to make it a 120-day appeal process so that everyone's given at least 30 days before the hearing, everything that's gonna be used at the hearing. I've got property owners with vested rights and they're saying. This person who just paid a $200 appeal fee is putting my $2 million project on hold for.
Okay, but on the other hand, you have someone who's an adversely affected party who has not had access to all this information. And they have the right to have access to that information.
So I'm not saying that we should massage this from its current language, to say that you have to submit everything at the time of the appeal. But there needs to be some sort of time period
Okay.
where we can still have a timely appeal hearing and everyone knows what everyone else's arguments and documents and basis for their arguments are.
And you know, if you add this stuff to it, that's gonna, I mean. You can't sit in a cave and wait until something's issued and say, oh, I need to appeal this. You've had the process through the notice.
True,
you had the
true.
hearings,
They,
you had
and they,
Commission hearing, many opportunities.
and if they get notified, I didn't notice this on the JUC, in the. But is there about noticing the public?
We have to comply with all procedural requirements.
Act.
So they have to be noticed at least 24 hours in advance. Anyone who requests notice, so they get the push email from the public notice website. Anytime an agenda comes up on for JUC, they get to read, they get the email, they click and read the agenda and say, oh, I should probably show. This is right out for my subdivision.
Okay,
So in case I forget, because this is something we want to think about, it's likely gonna come through, right? We're gonna have to create a new folder on the state
Yes.
website and
Yeah.
notify the public that it's
Yeah.
there, because otherwise you'll never get it.
Yeah.
yeah, we'll have to do
Put
something.
in your newsletter, say, hey, if you're that type of person who likes to follow and keep up on the city meetings and agendas and stuff like that.
Guess what? There's a new thing you need to subscribe to.
That's how I write out
Yeah.
meetings.
Especially if you take Charlie or
You can subscribe to the ERC.
If you guys, instead of a resolution, then we're gonna have a public hearing and we can say that.
We just said something about one.
Because then it starts spreading the word. You can tell them that at the public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Because if we get this in ordinance, we can explain that to them at
Right.
the beginning of the public hearing that you must subscribe to it.
If you won't have it
The
done.
other point, I know we've got, are you guys open playing?
No, just,
So you're on. The way I look at this ordinance, this has been requested by the council and drafted by the town attorney. So this is an ordinance going to the planning commission from the top down,
Yes.
meaning that it is not. They have to provide a recommendation. It could be a recommendation for approval or not. It's not necessarily one that we're asking them to tinker with.
Right.
And redraft.
I wanted to make sure that they understand they don't tinker with it.
Well, I mean, I guess, okay, you've got some good input. That's some good input, but we just did this on another ordinance in.
No, it has to-
And the planning commission just tried to rip it completely apart. It's like, wait a minute, we appointed you guys. We spent a couple $1,000s having our city attorney draft this big ordinance, and then you guys are sitting there tabling it because you want to redraft it? No, it came from the top down, and under state law, it requires a recommendation. And if you don't timely make a recommendation, we have to deem it as being recommended to come.
We denied it. Okay, are we done discussing this one?
I just wanted to make one comment that, thank you.
This is
Drafting
This is very good.
That, and it was very
You
timely.
don't need to
we
thank me.
do. So what we all were stressing about, and you solved our problems with this ordinance, so thank you very much.
I think it's a good balance because it gives Gene a lot of input. But it guides him, I think it insulates him between us doing a new contract, between creating, he's doing things. Not necessarily always on behalf of himself, on behalf of the JUC. And it helps the planning commission have a much more refined, focused recommendation and conditions. Because we've all heard, we even try to make recommendations and conditions don't apply and they don't. Don't have that.
This just means that I give up my seat as the most hated. elected official.
You wanna see,
Someone's gonna be the most faithful. No, it's not you anymore.
you wanna see my wife live out, is I'm gonna tell her that we created the DRC, and she's gonna come and run the first couple. I would need a place to stay if I.
I got
Thanks for the offer, place.
That's right, he's got to return rental. We can do this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll take a motion to continue this to next month. I make the motion that we continue item I. I have renamed this I.
If you want to say motion to continue, table this with instructing that it go to the planning commission for a public hearing and a recommendation.
Yes,
You want to also instruct me?
I think we have to just-
We want to look at it a little more.
Let's think on one more time to look at it, then we'll do that next one.
Sorry, we skipped.
That's they on the.
I get it.
To the next one.
Would you guys like me to change it from resolution to an ordinance?
Yes, yes, I think this would that make chapter 20.
and make those one or two moments.
All right. So I make a motion that this ordinance that we've just been discussing, revising chapter 16 and creating a development review committee be continued to next month. And I will table it and put it on next month's agenda.
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. All right, this next item, which I am calling J, is the preliminary plat approval extension for Zion's Landing subdivision.
Isn't that finally the final plan?
No, he had a preliminary plat, it expired in 6 months. We agreed to extend his preliminary plat.
Extend this preliminary plat in order to submit the final.
Right.
Yes,
Because he had a couple more things he couldn't finish.
he couldn't finish, plus he had stopped working on it because he didn't know what.
So you have to do it as a final plat deadline.
Well, I suppose we
But
can say it's a.
no, either way, it's fine. Just so I make sure we know what we're.
But we really need to have commission write up this process, because there's really not anything written how somebody, since it says it can be extended. We clerked and
There's no process
We need
whatsoever.
to amend our subdivision regulations to do so. We probably need to. Amend the subdivision regulations. to include-
Great, it's like, well, I told you she's got full employment. Yeah, like we are, just like county attorney. So, one of the things, so we were going to just vote on extending this
When, I'm fine, that's
1 year.
1 year.
We were initially were going to, he asked for 1 year and we said we would give it
Is
to him.
that from today or from the date that?
it's from the day that we have approved it. Not from beginning date.
Not from the
What you
date
gotta
that
understand.
it has like 6 months or whatever?
What you've got to understand is that the state processes for these self-contained systems can take 6 to 8 months. Sometimes longer.
So-
So he's saying, I've got it in process, but I have no idea when this is coming back.
Well, what I'm saying is, when does it expire?
The 6 months, the 6 months of
Months from today?
You know, 1 year from today is my understanding.
No, not the new one. When does it, this one go?
the one that we're extending, it expires now.
Oh,
Now,
there's not a date on it.
it was like the 25th
Oh,
of
so it's not-
September, so it would be the
Oh.
25th of March, so it'd be like in the next few days that his preliminary plat expires. Yeah.
That's what part of that. That date would.
Well, they're about to
There's
be
no
one
time
of the
left,
six,
so
there's
there's
no go.
That's what I was asking.
So we'll go with today.
Okay.
All right, but what came up in the discussion that I had with both Gene and he is that where this sits, where Zion Landing sits. So here's the water tower. Here's the road that comes down from the water tower to next to Pocketville Road, and there's where that cattle guard is. And we had agreed with we signed off on the water transportation agreement with the Water Conservancy District. They're gonna run the line down, put a pump station at the intersection with Pocketville Road and Colon Terrace Road to pump water up for this pipeline, that water pipeline they're gonna put. The plan is for that line to go right underneath that road that comes down and connects up to Pocketville Road. Zion's Landing, when you look at the plat, and they've got a road, and it goes just, it looks like it is that road, it is not. So here's where the road is, where the water tower road connects right now. The parcel that's going to get subdivided sits over here. And it sits on top of that road, and where he has his road coming down and joining up to Pocketville Road, the road for the water tower is over here. So his subdivision is gonna sit right smack on top of that road where the Water Conservancy District wants to put their pipeline. And where his road comes down, he's got it with a parcel and a parcel. There's gonna be a lot and a lot, and so what he said was that we asked for an easement. That's not gonna be it, you need this preliminary plat, not that. That we give it, that they would need to put an easement between those two lots for Water Conservancy District.
I think what we ought to do is ask the district on what their preference would be, because they may want to just be in the road. In the subdivisions road and then Pocketville, and not have a line go through an easement, a side yard easement between
Okay,
two lots.
well, the reason I'm bringing this up is when we approve this extension, we need to have him required to work with the Water Conservancy District. That has to be one of the conditions for the approved extension. He has to work with Water
You
Conservancy.
may find that if the district is fine with moving it out of
So like here,
this road.
the road, the water tower, road is out here.
The water that's up there, and he turns it down early,
Yes.
there. So if they want to continue, they're gonna have an easement through right here. They're gonna take it down, but what I'm saying is they may want to, they may want to just turn it
There,
down the road and have it go there instead of coming through a sidewalk.
yes, yes,
Either way, we just, when he's coming for his final plat, that's gonna.
he's to show what he's worked out with Water Conservancy District. So all I wanted is whatever motion we make to extend his preliminary plat, it needs to include a condition that he works with the Water Conservancy District. On that.
Because we're
Water
already
Conservancy.
signed off on the transport
Change.
agreement.
Yeah.
Wow. And, you know, they don't want to
So,
work
Gene,
that.
you and I talked about that the other day, and I said I was gonna let you make the motion, so
All right.
you prepared one? Okay. Are you ready?
Have we had a chance to talk to Justin about it?
I have not, I emailed him today and asked him, have you talked to Gene? We're gonna be making this approval.
Okay.
I wanna know what's going on.
He called me about this thing and I forgot all about the easement portion.
Okay.
That's paid, all he's got is preliminary plat. He hasn't even started his construction drawings, all his engineers to pick a phone and just figure it out. And he's like, yeah, down that road or going to any place.
Yeah, so. Yeah, I'm sure he's gonna do that. All right, I'll make a motion to extend the preliminary plat process for Zion Landing subdivision for 1 year from today's date. Subsequent upon their with the Water Conservancy District to either provide an easement or whatever agreements they come up with to pass when they want to do that property as an easement. Something like that.
Gene, is it all right if we say specific date extended until March 21st, 2024?
Well, he just said here.
From a year instead of saying. a
Oh,
year
okay.
from
Give a
date.
specific date.
Yeah, the specific date, because then it makes it easier for everybody to
Right.
figure out what.
You know what it is, Crystal?
March
21st.
2024.
Yes,
Till March, I'm bending to say till March.
second.
All in favor? Okay,
Was there a second?
yes.
Yeah.
So we are now on item K, which I changed that A, B, C, D to be K. Discussion of additional buildings at Public Works location on Pocketville Road to make the location more useful. So we talked about this at the work meeting. And you guys were asking questions about the fire station before we would start going out and buying the buildings, spending money. I have gone through every file in the office related to the fire district, and I cannot find, and Heath, I'm wondering if you might have some records. You were the town attorney with this when we signed on with Hurricane Valley Fire District. So I just wondered if you might find something in your records that have to do with this. But I found a lease, but it's not signed, not completed whatsoever, but it was a lease for the fire building, and it was in 2012. And I went back and I looked at the minutes of the meetings, and I found January 2012, there was a discussion about what to do about the building, and Bruce Dinsley said, I'll go talk to the fire district. And then the next month he comes in, he says, oh, I have this lease that the fire district gave to me. And then there was a little bit of discussion, and that was it. There was no sign the lease is unsigned, I don't know what happened. No clue whatsoever.
Is
But
the lease a recurring lease, automatic recurring? lease?
no, this is unsigned,
Right, but they may have some copy, you don't have.
and we don't, and so I don't know if he might even have something, whatever, I don't know. But this lease, what it said is, Virgin, there was a section here, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. Virgin Town owns a fire station, hereinafter referred to as station, located in Virgin, suitable for use by the district. C, district desires to lease the fire station owned by Virgin. And then they go on and say, okay, here's what the payment's going to be, which is $1 a year. Virgin agrees to lease the station to the district, and district leases the leased premises from Virgin for use by the district exclusively as a fire station and administrative offices. The leased premises could consist of building owned by Virgin, includes furniture, fixtures, equipment present on the leased premises. Is leased as is. Virgin shall retain ownership during its useful life. District may replace at its option and sole cost any of the furniture, fixtures, equipment.
What's the term, how is it renewed?
That I'm getting to, that's on the next page. The term of this lease shall commence as of the effective date of this lease and run for 12 consecutive months. It may be renewed on an annual basis for an additional 12 months up until December 31, 2032. So, there's no signed lease, there's no nothing, there's no discussion any further in any of the letters.
Has the district,
And then it says the lease payment shall be $1.
to what extent has the district utilized that building?
Oh, they've got stuff.
It's a store.
They use it to store stuff, and they have the key, and this even says here, let me find it, where did it say this? Virgin access. Virgin, its agents, employees, or contractors may enter the leased premises at any time in response to an emergency or to service mechanical equipment or utilities for the building. Virgin may enter the leased premises at reasonable hours and following reasonable notice to inspect the premises, supply any other service which the lease requires Virgin to provide, post notices. It's got all the stuff we could get in there and do, yet they will not let us have a key. They've got the only key and we cannot get it.
I was ready to redo the lease and say.
Well,
I
I don't know that they're-
You can build these.
This was a proposed lease. I don't know if the lease has ever been signed because all I found was this proposed lease. I called and I've got no response. I've left messages.
Can you send me that copy of that lease and I'll get a hold of Joe and that.
Thank you. I even called. Yes, I was gonna.
Last meeting, so
I was gonna ask Paul to follow.
send me that lease and I'll find it.
Okay, this is the only copy. So, yes, I tried to find out. I even called Keen and left a message with Keen and there's been.
I'm
no-
gonna have a meeting with Joe either tomorrow or Monday. What's that up yet? So send me that and I'll.
My message, okay, my message with Keen was pretty clear as to what I wanted to know, and there's just been no.
I'll
response.
talk to Joe.
She can also went through all the minutes too.
Yes, I read minutes and minutes and minutes and minutes, and there's just been nothing. And so, I just wondered if you might have anything in your files about the fire district, because you were on the
Yeah.
town council then.
Yeah, we have, we both scanned everything, so I've got copies of everything. I just have to pull up.
Okay,
All I can say is in the 3 years I've been in, 3.5 years now, we've never discussed the lease as part of our being.
well, even when I was on town council, we never discussed it.
It's a recurring.
You just need to be on the land.
Yeah.
They're on the renewal, is it automatic renewal?
No. It says,
It also states in there that they need to be paying for their utilities.
yeah, they're supposed to pay the utilities. It just says, the term of this lease shall commence as of the effective date of this lease and run for 12 months. and may be renewed on an annual basis for an additional 12 months until December 31st, 2032. That's all it says.
I got a heck of a deal for them. They can, since they haven't paid the utilities and the dollar and everything else, they can keep using the building and pay for these other buildings we need for our staff, or else relinquish the building.
So
Sorry.
part of my point, so we've got this, but even if we were to say, we need the building back, it's gonna take months for us to get that building back. So what are we gonna do about the buildings that we want to go forward with?
These other buildings could come in handy even if we have. them.
Even if we have, that's why I just wonder, should we get the shade structure at least, or what should we do?
I don't know, the little office thing itself.
And that's, we could use that for other things.
I'd like to at least wait till fall is,
Okay.
and we have at least some.
Okay.
I know we're kind of hurrying time, but that's me, that's just me.
I think though that we might.
You can have-
We'll give it one spot. One more, thank you.
I think we should
You
think
know how it
about
goes.
kind of change, fix the ground too. Did you see how much water's up there?
Oh, yeah, he said there's some work.
Needs to level out.
Okay, so, the last item, oh my God, I forgot we were gonna have a closed meeting tonight.
We need to vote on that public order of the public building.
We need to vote to table it, right?
Yes,
Because it's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Motion to table the discussion of the public works buildings location on Pocketville Road
to next month.
to next month.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So this next one that had to do, this discussion of returning the administration of urgent town elections to Washington County Clerk's Office. Crystal and I went to a meeting last week, that was on elections, and it was about the fact that there is this movement afoot in the state for municipalities to start doing their own elections. And these people that came to do the presentation basically were saying, no, you don't want to do that. And they went into quite detail about what's involved, and they explained this one thing. That is my final thing that I was like, okay, we've got to go back to the county for sure. They said, they asked, hey, anybody sitting here in this meeting know what happened with Iron County and their ballots last election? And they had a problem with their ballots. And Crystal raises her hand and says, we have the exact same problem because we use the same printer. Well, apparently, and I was hoping he would be here, instead of having to go to the bathroom. That they mentioned, there he is. Good timing. They mentioned a code, they mentioned that there was a code section, and we did not, I want Crystal to contact them and find out exactly what code section. But if there is a problem with the ballots, that the clerk, the election official of the town or the municipality, which in our case is Crystal, could be investigated and cited by the attorney general. And we're like, oh, we're not gonna have that.
No.
It wasn't her it wasn't her fault.
Can I speak to it?
Yes.
So after. our
Did you
discussion-
talk, did you go to?
After our discussion, I called Joe, I had to drive up to Cedar City, so I spent an hour on with the senator talking to them about it, getting more details. And they can hold the election official solely responsible for its grip on the election. And one of the things he brought up is, the problem is these printers are focused on their big jobs. They don't want to focus on the small jobs, so that becomes secondary, and then you're taking the risk of not getting your ballots out on time. And I've spoken with, about a year ago, I spent some time with Susan Lewis talking to her about it. Her view was, I really don't care, it's just us, we still have to review everything, we still have to collect it, so it really doesn't do anything for us, other than the only downside was, she says, we aren't gonna recognize signatures that your people that live in the town might. That's it.
That's the problem.
I'm fine with moving back to the county. I think it's better on us personally.
So, I talked to the Lieutenant Governor's office today, and I talked to the county clerk today, so Shelley was in the Lieutenant Governor's office, who's in charge of the elections. And I talked to Melanie, who's in charge of the elections on site, both of them, today. What she was talking about Iron County, which I was unaware was last year's election.
Yeah.
They screwed up.
Yes,
So,
that's
but
what,
I thought she
that's
was
what,
talking about what happened with us.
no,
because
she was talking about
on the
Iron County.
2020, what was it?
21.
Election, it was Tooele, Vernal, Virgin, King and Iron County, that card printing messed up on ballots. I ended up getting, Vernal's got mine, everybody knows in this whole town, I do the biggest monstrous fit you could ever imagine. Anyways,
She's still. thinks about this.
because no. Is no longer going to be printing ballot. Be honest, it's a good day. So for us to find a company that will print such small amounts of ballot. It's gonna be,
This is
really
just
hard.
what,
That's
just what she said.
So I talked to Melanie and she's getting a contract written up that we have to have approved by next month.
Okay, I knew it was gonna be soon.
Yeah. And then I talked to Shelley as well, and she said, kind of the smart move on us, as far as verifying signatures and everything. Melanie always verified the signatures, it was never the clerk. So. The
She
signature
began them and sent them.
always went to Melanie, it was never me, I'm not allowed to verify signature. So that's not gonna change, the only thing that's really changing is ballots will not come to me, we will have a Dropbox.
That's what
It's
we're
the
doing.
county, yep. It's the counties, I don't have a key to it. They lock it up just because they did with the last election that they had for Utah.
You mean this is gonna be a Dropbox that sits inside the office? Oh, no, we want people to be able to drop some outside, outside of office hours.
We can, we just need to mount it outside.
Lots for that last one.
No, well, we got a box, a new box for where people drop off their payments, and it was big enough for a ballot to go
Right,
through.
it's in the way that-
Well, it held everything we needed it
I
to.
thought we got one.
I just want people to be able to drop off ballots.
No, because we were doing that for, and I know one has the key to that box outside. But we were doing that payment box as well as the ballot box.
So there were payments and ballots.
So it could be either or, which wasn't a big deal, really, we thought it was a big issue. I was the only one that had access to it, and he did it. I'm still the elected official in Virgin.
Election,
Regardless if Melanie is doing the ballots, the counting, I still am a part of that process.
So the question is, can we use that to drop off ballots if we are not doing our own?
One, people are still gonna drop them off in there, and still gonna have to grab them and put them in
Oh, the other box.
the box.
Summer, it's just in there.
Deal, we can have somebody come watch me where I open it up on the days that I'm there. If there's any ballots, they watch me put them in the ballot box. It's
If
not,
I was
big.
you, I'd want something there.
Yeah.
Well, no, I would,
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, it's not a big deal, like, if that's gonna happen. I mean, I had people dropping ballots like through the door.
so there wouldn't be the need this time for people to go and watch you at the post office, take stuff out of the post office, but that's gonna go to the county, because they go to the county.
All it is.
Yeah, because anything that's mailed, is
Yeah.
mailed to the county.
We would not have very many, we didn't really have very many actually that came in the drop boxes.
Yeah, I know there weren't that.
Most of them were all by mail.
Yeah.
So I would say 80% of them were by mail.
Okay, all right, so, he had to
Done.
go.
So I'll make a motion, unless we want to wait and see if he's got something to say.
But she said to me over the stuff,
Just wait,
she
she's
says
gonna-
the sooner the better that we can sign it. She says it's about $250 a registered voter. is what it costs.
Yeah, what we calculated today when we were doing the budget was
Can I-
$3 per register.
And I think that it's totally worth the money just for all of the stress and the bad feelings of the town problems that we have with our elections, which have been back years. This is an excellent solution, solves all of that.
I think
Well,
I'm just gonna put it out there and do it.
it's well worth the money.
Now you wanna, if you guys wanna ever hire a deputy clerk, just wait till after this election, you'll be able to hire hurricanes, because they're doing.
Oh, no, of course they are. Of course, first, it's gonna be that hand out. So Paul, before we make a motion, Jean was gonna make a motion on this item, but we wanted to wait, see if you had any comments about the election going back to the county.
It should go back to the county. But we don't have, except possible comment, possible motion, vote.
So go for it,
I'm
Jean.
gonna make a motion that we do whatever process we need to return the election process back to the county clerk.
And we will be presented with a contract.
Yeah.
They won't have to approve, they're not approving the contract.
We just.
Voting to start the process.
Yeah, second, anybody second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Is that, I assume returning an election to the county is not something that needs a roll call vote? Okay, all right, that is the last item on the agenda, except to go into a closed meeting to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation. I had that on the agenda.
Motion to close the public meeting, open closed meeting.
Wait a minute, let's walk Deborah down this morning.
He made a motion.
He made a motion.
And so I need to say that, I've said what it's about, pending or reasonably imminent litigation. And that the meeting will be taking place right here in the same room where where we're sitting right now. Who seconded?
Second.
Okay, this has to have a roll call vote.
Aye.
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 Okay. All right, you have to step out. Okay. And I will stop.